On today's episode, we're talking about breaking past $1 million in revenue. It's a stage where agencies get stuck in a specific way. Not enough opportunities coming in, and not enough capacity to handle the work if it did. We'll dig into why that trap happens, a math exercise every founder should run, and the 5 ways agencies actually get over the hump.
All right, Seibuk. So back in episode 16, which was scaling your agency beyond 2 million, that was, more about where things break when growth shows up. And, especially like as you have some degree of service and, kind of customer fit, you kind of have these scaling challenges. But today's is a bit different. It's all about this $1 million kind of invisible ceiling, getting from 0 to literally 1, right? And how to break through that.
Yeah, and I feel like at this size, you feel like you're trapped, right? Because you're hesitant to commit to any hires because you feel like you don't have enough money, but you also don't have the bandwidth yourself to go out and find freelancers or part-time people to help you with the execution. So you almost have this demand problem and capacity problem at the same time, and they're each kind of blocking each other from moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, there is this like psychological pressure, right? At this stage, like everything, every hire feels like you're gonna kind of bet the house, and you're like, oh, you get so nervous to kind of make that move. And this is. We feel like this is something that we're kind of qualified to talk about because we did struggle through quite a bit to break that $1 million ceiling. I think for Barrel, it took us about 5 years to reach that 1 million level in annual revenue. So let's actually start with kind of talking about like what's happening at this 0 to $1 million stage. And, it's almost like you're in a little bit of a haze, let's say kind of like this fog, right? Things are not as clear. And so part of that, I think, starts with your service offering not being as developed. And, there's kind of this reactivity to what each client needs. And so from there, every proposal feels like it's done from scratch, and the repeatability isn't quite there to kind of get like a machine going for your agency.
Yeah, and it feels like there's like two things like working against each other. Like you're probably not providing enough value for each client that you're serving, or you don't have enough volume of clients to serve, and like one or the other really keeps you under that $1 million line.
Yeah, and by value, you're simply saying also like the ability to charge them an
Exactly.
amount that makes sense, right?
Yeah. And like when you talk to founders at the stage, you kind of you hear, we do everything for whoever shows up. So it's like anything for anyone type of mode where you're really just trying to survive and grow and keep the lights on as much as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so one kind of way to think through this fog is to embrace a little bit of math, right? And I think. This is an exercise that we do with all of our agencies, which is kind of this idea of like working backwards, right? And thinking about, okay, like if you were to try to achieve X dollars in revenue, how would you get there? What would that revenue be composed of in terms of number of clients and the types of engagements that would be there? So let's try to apply that for this very specific case. How would $1 million actually be composed of what kind of engagements?
Yeah. One scenario is you have 10 clients on a $8.5K a month retainer. So just consistently over the course of a year, if you maintain 10 clients at that size, that's $1 million. You could have projects mixed in. So let's say you have 5 clients who do $100,000 projects. So that's captures $500,000 a year, and then you have 10 clients on smaller retainer. So let's say it's $4,000 a month retainer. That gets you to that $1 million number. Or you can have a business where, let's say your monthly retainers are smaller, so like $3K a month retainer, and you have 30 of those clients on $3K a month. That also gets you to $1 million. So these are all different agencies, right? What you're selling is different, and your services are different, and you have a different ICP. Your team is probably different, and how you kind of go about the BD motion is different because what you're selling is different in each of these scenarios.
Yeah, I think a good example might be, maybe taking a couple of our Barrel Holdings agencies. So, we have Vaulted Oak, which does a lot of web dev, support and maintenance. So it's more volume for smaller kind of, ongoing maintenance clients, versus, let's say, Barrel, less clients in terms of number, but then, they're kind of doing some of these bigger projects and bigger retainers. And so, very different sales machines, very different kind of processes and team construction.
Yeah. And you talked about kind of working backwards. One way to get to that number is like work backwards and figure out, where do I need to get, how much more business do I need to add every month? So in a hypothetical scenario, let's say you win one of every 3 deals, right? And you need 10 clients, right? 10 clients a month. So then you can kind of work backwards and say, all right, I need 30 qualified opportunities. And then that's, 2 to 3 per month. So you really can, this is a snapshot, and you're going to have churn throughout the year. So these numbers are probably a little bit higher, 10 to 50%. But you can kind of work backwards and try to figure out how can you give your BD team or BD person concrete targets on how to achieve that $1 million in revenue versus a kind of an open-ended,
in most cases, yourself, right? You're as the founder. How can you give yourself
at the size? That's yourself.
Yeah. So basically, the question, is like, how do you give yourself as the founder enough shots on goal? And it's interesting because you talked about 2 to 3 kind of qualified opportunities per month, but we're not talking about like pure leads because that's another level up. You could argue because qualified leads, you need to figure out the percentage of if you get 10 leads, what percentage of that is actually qualified, and so then that gives you yet another number to go to like think about in terms of like working backwards. And you could go even further. This is where marketing comes into play, like what kind of ads or calls or whatever kind of activities you're doing kind of drive those leads in the first place. So anyway, you could keep on going, but like at the core, kind of figuring out how do you actually arrive at that $1 million number is a really helpful exercise.
So the flip side of all this is thinking about like the org structure, right? Oftentimes, that kind of chicken and egg thing is like, I don't have the work, and I can't afford to hire the people. But the way to think about it is, what's a 12-month version of your organization? Like right now, the founder probably wear many hats, and when you actually get the revenue, like who are the first hires you're going to make? Like what's the progression of, as your revenue increases, how do you scale the organization?
And this is, when you think about org, you're really talking about your ability to deliver on, the work. And so it is thinking about delivery capacity, right? And I'd say like, the on the psychological side, when the pipeline feels dry, right? Like spending time on planning the future of your org just feels like a big waste of time because you're like I don't have the opportunities, I don't have the revenue coming in. Why would I, think about the future of, what my team is? But then, sure enough, you do sign a contract, and then by then you're scrambling, right? Like a lot of times you're just like, oh my goodness, I gotta cobble together a team, or kind of in desperation find somebody to help me out. And so it's almost like it's counterintuitive to how it feels at the time. You got to do the thing that actually doesn't feel that pressing because it sure will.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. It's do the planning now, and then you'll hopefully feel the impact of it when you do need to make those hires, and you're not prepared for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess all right, we talked about like the revenue math side, and then of course the delivery side. And then one thing we need to kind of underscore with all of this is at this early stage, it's very important to like, you're in a bit of a survival mode, right? You got to kind of get in this, build enough momentum to kind of get out of living kind of in this, very subsistence level type of business. And so, one thing we do talk a lot about on this podcast is positioning, right? About like how you have to be very disciplined about, the type of work you take on and, kind of how you position things, and also very being very kind of specific about what you do for who. But I think at sub million, you can make the case that yeah, like for some folks, you want to start a little bit broader. Maybe not like a pure generalist, but you want to at least kind of broaden. Maybe you don't, like zero in on your vertical focus, so quickly, or even like, if you have a broader capability, like let's say, design or something, or branding, like you kind of keep it a little bit loose, so that you can capture a bit more business in the early days.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're it feels like we're contradicting ourselves a little bit, but one thing we've talked about in the past is, in terms of your outbound and outwards facing marketing, you could take a stronger stance in your positioning, but that doesn't mean like you have to like reject any lead that doesn't match that exact positioning, right? Like let's say you get these like warm intros to people that and you know they're great engagements. You can deliver on them well. Sometimes, yeah, you should take that work, and over time, you'll deliver. Those people will could that could work to lead to more work, and ultimately that could shape your positioning. What you thought your positioning should be could be shaped by a lot of the work that you get outside of that. So just underscoring, just be open minded at this stage on everything that comes in.
Yeah, you said it well. Like, you could be a generalist about who you actually serve if you have to, but at the end of the day, like, yeah, you do want to kind of think about positioning in the long run and not be a generalist about how the business runs.
All right, so we've identified 5 paths to get over this hump, and if you think about how most agencies get over $1 million, it's not like one or two of these. It's like a combination, and it's oftentimes it could be a slow grind, but let's go through each and we'll talk more about it.
Okay, let's start with the first one. So this first path, and this one we've seen a lot. We call it the whale client, and it could be more than one, but let's just say the whale client is, yeah, it's this like anchor client that really helps this budding agency turbocharge their revenue. There's enough kind of money coming in that there's cushion to make that first key hire, right? And a lot of times these usually happen because the founder or founders have some kind of pre-existing relationship. So let's say a common one might be they used to work work at a brand, right? They used to work at a brand, and they decide to kind of start their own agency, and that brand becomes their first anchor client. And so now that work is kind of enough to help them make their first hires, and before you know it, they're doing over $1 million in the first year. So that's like a common one that we've seen. But it could be some of these early clients that you get in your first 6 months. Just one of them, for whatever reason, they get product market fit in their side, or they get some kind of funding and they just need your help in a big way, and they trust you. Like, that could also turbocharge your growth.
Yeah, and obviously this leads to the risk of client concentration. Like if that client leaves, and suddenly it could be a majority of your revenue. But it goes without saying, delivery is important here. So you deliver well, so that this client, you can expand your work with them, grow, and also they can become a good referral source for you.
Yep.
The next path is a channel that catches fire. So examples of this could be, a tech platform, a complementary agency. It could be like an investor network, or let's say it was like a PR moment that you really captured on, that allows you to really ride that wave to get a lot of business. The one kind of example in our portfolio, BX Studio, they really planted a flag early on in the Webflow ecosystem when it was early on, but it was also growing fast, and it was a less crowded ecosystem at that stage. But they were really able to use that platform to grow, pretty quickly.
Yeah. Another good one might be like, and this is an example I've seen across a few different agencies, is they end up working for a portfolio company that's that's under private equity backed, right? So and then what happens is they do such a good job for that portfolio company, they get shared up to the PE firm that which then brings these uh, agencies into the other portfolio companies, and before you know it, you went from having one client to maybe six or seven, and you go from very much over a million in a hurry. So I think the channels are super important. Okay, so the path three is what we're calling retention that stacks. So in the past we've talked about net revenue retention. So this is kind of like taking your revenue of the clients from your prior or that cohort of clients, and then kind of seeing, hey, what's the percent that you actually retain the next year? And so if you did, 500,000 with the client the previous year, and then the next year you did 250,000, then that's 50% net revenue retention. But if you're able to actually flip that and make it over 100%, so you did 500K with your cohort of clients in year one, and then year two you were able to do 750,000. Let's say a 50% increase net revenue retention, then that just makes it that much easier to get to the $1 million level, because you're basically the pressure to add new logos to replace the clients isn't really there, and any new client is basically gravy on top in terms of revenue growth. So yeah, this is it's slow, in many cases, because you got to actually work through and kind of build that relationship and have those results. But I think it's one of those kind of ways to get to a million.
And this path feels like it's almost like a baseline for everything else. Having that retention and also executing well for your clients definitely sets that foundation so that you're not necessarily scrambling to win the work every single year to like replenish that $1 million, and you can feel the growth over time. And we also talk about this idea of engagement yield. So when you also do well for clients, that throws off like case studies and proof that you can share for the next engagement that you're trying to win. That client could give you referrals to other people in their networks, and you can expand within that existing client itself. So there's a lot that you get from executing well for them, for that one client. We go into depth into this topic quite a bit in episode 25. So if you're interested in engagement yield, I would listen to that episode.
Awesome. Okay. I'll do path four. Okay. So this one we talked about. This one's maybe more narrowly focused, which is cold outbound, for the right model. And, we say this because I think, cold outbound gets a bad rep because, some agencies that, maybe shouldn't be leveraging cold outbound at all, or even maybe they're doing it too early, kind of feel like it doesn't work at all. But there are agencies that do lean heavily into cold outbound, and these are typically what we call kind of productized services with a client buying motion that's a bit faster than some of these other agencies that require longer trust building. So some examples might be lead gen for SMBs. Maybe it's like a package of video testimonials you're buying, or kind of a set of landing pages, or maybe like a ad creative subscription that you're getting as well. And so these are really kind of like easy to explain, deliverables based kind of services, and often targeting maybe one decision maker who has the authority to give the green light and make that purchase. And so from there, like, you can really leverage the different channels on the outbound side, whether that's cold email, might be sending personalized LinkedIn messages, maybe even doing some cold dialing, or even leveraging stuff like a convo ad on LinkedIn with like a free gift offer, right? Just for taking a meeting. So there's a lot of ways to kind of go into the outbound stuff, and I'd say like it really is. It works if it's a numbers game too. You kind of have to have that target, and then you have to kind of really hammer with the offer, and then just kind of make them get on that phone call.
Yeah, and to your point, it works really well, but like it's really clear. The offer, and the decision can be made literally pretty quickly thereafter. I'll move on to the next path, number five, key hires that unlock the founder. So this is really thinking about how to help the founder have more leverage. So this could be helping on the delivery side. So whether that's like a low cost offshore team member that can help free up time, or other people that can supplement what the founder does well. And really the point here is so that the founder can dedicate more time to go selling and closing deals. Because at this stage, oftentimes, you might delegate delivery first, and then the sales you keep yourself, so that you can, you're probably the best at selling at that point of the business.
Yeah, if I kind of recall in Barrel's history, like a key hire, I remember, we brought in our friend Andy back in the day, where he was used to be a like an Accenture, consultant, right? So and then he left his corporate job to pursue golf seriously, but then just had to make some money on the side, and so we were like, hey, why don't you work part time for us at Barrel? And so we got for a discount versus what we would pay for somebody of his caliber, like we were able to get this kind of hire that we could delegate a lot of the project management and client comms side to, and that freed us up in a big way to focus on delivery, like actually making the stuff, and then also doing BD. So even small steps like that, it doesn't have to be like a big hire, but like you can kind of get smart folks from your network and then use that as like a way to inch towards that. And so I think and there's throughout our history there's many kind of different hires that we've made that made a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. So you talked about how it took us 5 years to break that $1 million barrier. And, in the lens of these multiple paths, just like reflecting which paths did we take to get there. And feels like it was a combination of path one. So the path one is like the whale client, and path three, so retention that stacks. And for us, it was, there are a couple clients that we really grew with, that started with one engagement that led to more and more, and we just kept expanding our service offering to serve them, and that really helped grow our initial team base. And then subsequent years of just that client's sticking around the next year, and then you add a couple more, and then suddenly like your base keeps growing, and we inch towards that $1 million. It took a while, but it was like a combination of all this that got us there.
Yeah. And I think, it wasn't always like a linear kind of growth. I mean, it was definitely lumpy along the way. And so, I think, to our credit, like we stuck in, we hung in there for long enough for things to kind of click into place and get us over that $1 million hump.
Yeah. One more thing I can remember from the early days is, so that, some of the initial clients that we worked with were mostly on like the design side, for example. So we ended up hiring like a bunch of designers at the beginning. Yep. And then we landed a large client that had a lot of like website development needs. So then we had to hire a bunch of website, developers and engineers. And suddenly our team makeup changed, where we had designers at first, but then we had designers and developers. And then what that allowed us and opened up was we could then sell in larger engagements, combining like the full team, which previously it was more segmented in terms of the work. So we never could have planned it that way, but it just happened from, getting the clients and then growing organically and making the most of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so many lessons from there that like we could probably spend a whole episode litigating, because I'm like, part of that makes me think, oh my goodness, we lucked out in some way, and some of these hires in hindsight were like a little bit premature, but all good. Things worked out. So okay, so we talked about the 5 paths, right? So just to summarize the 5 paths again, we talked about the whale client, the channel that catches on fire, retention that stacks, the cold outbound for the right model. And then, of course, the last path is the key hires that unlock the founder. So, I think those are some of the common ways we've seen, agencies break that $1 million kind of ceiling. And also, like we said, it might be, one or maybe more than one, maybe 2 or 3 of these that kind of combine to get you there. And yeah, just it's never too early to think about positioning, even if you're gonna take on a lot of random kind of work in the beginning. Just continue to think about it. Check out our foundation app on foundation.agencyhabits.com. And yeah, just think about the future of agency. How to work backwards from that $1 million, and design the agency that you really want. So thank you for tuning in. Till next time, have a good one.
Thanks.